Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I know we are the last. It's a very long day, so I hope it will not take too much time of your time. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. Thank you, Rami, for the quick introduction. It's a great pleasure, actually, to be here with you today to discuss a very important point, which is the sector of pharmaceutical and how this sector is important for investor or for investment. Before I start, let me introduce the Egyptian Drug Authority. Egyptian Drug Authority is an independent public service authority directly affiliated to the Egyptian Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, and performs all the regulatory functions that leads to ensuring access to safe, effective, and high-quality products in different scopes. Sorry. Okay. Today, the Egyptian Drug Authority collaborates with international regulatory bodies, different regulatory bodies, and participate in harmonization initiatives, aligning its regulatory practices with global standards. These alignments foster trusts among international pharmaceutical companies and encourages them to invest in Egypt. EDA is the first African NRA to reach WHO maturity level 3, vaccine producing. And we are extending our services in maturity level 3 with the medicine as well during the course of this week, of this year. We are member of the cooperating extensively and in harmony with the African unions. Why I'm mentioning the African Union or NIBAD? Because we can consider Egypt as a gate to Africa. So we have to focus on the geographic location of the Egyptian market as a country. Within the framework of the African Medicine Regulatory Harmonization EMRA program. So this is our interaction within the Africa as a continent. It's not working. Okay, Egypt is a member of several important international networks and organizations in which our European counterparts are also strongly participating. As an example, for a member in ICH, an observer of EDQM, the European Pharmacopoeia Commission, which facilitates the language, the common language between the Egyptian organization, Egyptian Drug Authority, and the counterparts in the European side. Next slide, please. So these are the organizations which we are members or observers in all these international organizations. This facilitates a lot when you decide to enter into the Egyptian market. When we say Egyptian market, we don't want to consider Egyptian market only, because we have to consider Egypt as a gate to Africa. So why Egypt? Why we recommend you to consider Egypt? When we consider, I mean, any market, we have to consider different things. Thank you. Not only the geographic location. I mean, geographic location is very important because we are in the middle of the south and the north. So we are at the center. When you are in the center, it's easy for you to do different things, to serve the north and to serve as well the south. Egypt has, so this is number one competitive advantage. What else? We have 120 million consumer, which will consume the medicine, out of 1.4 billion in Africa. So when you are in Egypt, you will not have access only to 120 million, but you will have access to the 1.4 billion Africans. Egyptian market, if I may give you some idea, is the second biggest pharma market within the continent and Middle East, with 7.65 billion US dollar. We produce locally more than 4 billion packs, with CAGR, or compound average growth rate, 13.6, which is considered a double-digit growth. I mean, in Europe, the growth in Europe is 1%, 1.5%, maximum 2%. So here we have double-digit growth. We have 170 plus factories, sites of manufacturing of pharmaceuticals. So we do have the infrastructure with 800 production line. We do have 120 cosmetics manufacturing sites, 116 medical devices sites, and we do have, out of the 170 manufacturing sites in medicine, 12 approved GMP, EU GMP, with GMP standard, European standard factories. They manufacture already for Europe. So we do have this today. This is a very interesting slide that will show you. The source of this slide is IQVIA, which I know, I'm sure you know what does it mean, IQVIA. Egypt is considered #1 country within the Middle East and Africa in producing medicine. Out of every 100 packs, 91 packs is locally produced in Egypt. Whether it's coming from multinational companies or local producers. So 91 out of 100 packs is being locally produced in Egypt. So we still have 9% as an opportunity. What is the value of this 9%? What is the value of these 9 packs remaining for every 100 packs? The value is more than 34%. So we still have potential. So each one bag we will localize in the future will have more than $5, which is a good sizable opportunity for investing in Egypt. This is how we see it. Yeah, we succeeded to localize, I would say, the cheap products, but we are looking forward to localize the more expensive product, which is a good opportunity for the European companies to think about Egypt. The source of this data is IQVIA as well. If you see the Fitch report, Egypt continues to boost its position as the biggest medicine producer in the Middle East and Africa, which is a fact. So let's summarize the North, Center, South strategy. Geographic location, we do have a competitive advantage here. Big market size, 120 million consumer. A big market with double-digit growth. A gate to Africa. So how can we utilize that from the European perspective? If we think about Africa, Egypt can be the gate. You manufacture here, you export to Africa. If you think about Europe, you can manufacture here and ship it back to Europe with lower prices, because everything here is much cheaper than Europe. This will increase or improve the bottom line at the European side. And we do have sites with huge capacity to manufacture the European products here. And this is why we welcome the European companies to think about Egypt as a hub for manufacturing in its product. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. If I may ask Mr. Andrea Clerici, Director of Corporate Finance and Global Activities at the European Investment Bank, to join us. Thank you. Ms. Christelle Saghbini, Head of Pharma International Region at Sanofi. Thank you. Dr. Riad Armanios, CEO of EVA Pharma. Thank you. Thank you again for your presence. We'll start with you, Dr. Ali. On top of the presentation that you made, what are the notable successes that you see, or success stories that you see in the Egyptian pharmaceutical sector?
Let me give you one quick example, which is the plasma. Plasma is considered one of the area which is coming under the most expensive or the expensive range of portfolio. We succeeded to build, if we go back to a few years ago, we don't have any site, whether in Egypt or within the region, to produce plasma. Egyptian government succeeded to build its first factory with cooperation with the Grifols, the Spanish company, to build its site here. And we do have today 9 collection sites. Yes, still part of the production is being done in Spain. However, the factory is under construction, and we succeeded to localize the plasma industry in Egypt. This will not be a good opportunity only for the Egyptian market, but it will be considered as a good opportunity for Middle East and Africa. So it's a good, very good example of success.
Makes a lot of sense. Building on that, Andrea, can you give us some examples of projects that you financed in the region, and more overall, an overview of how your group, the EIB, supports investments in the pharma or life science sectors?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you for those who made it so far. Very long day for everybody. Healthcare is a key priority for the European Investment Bank, and as the EU Bank, what we try to do is to foster the innovation in this sector, to ensure that there is an equitable access to healthcare for everybody, and to try and address the unmet medical needs that we see. And how we do that? We do that by financing research and development. We try to do that by financing critical manufacturing and also infrastructure. To give you an example, in the last 6 years, the bank has financed roughly 23 billion euros in this sector, out of which 4 were dedicated to outside Europe activities. We see, though, a very significant shift of activities. If I take 2023 as an example, out of 3.1 billion euros, 1.2 went to outside EU activities. And what it is more important for us is that by all these financing, 130 million people worldwide have had an improvement of the conditions, their condition in the healthcare sector. In the years, the bank has changed the operational model because of realizing that anyone or no one is able to meet what are all the needs that are outside there alone. So we have in the years set up partnership with other partners, in particular obviously the European Commission, but also the World Health Organization, WHO, UNICEF, and the Gates Foundation. And this was well before, for instance, the COVID, but when COVID struck, this was particularly important because that gave us the possibility to finance vaccine and vaccine campaigns worldwide. We have also enlarged our eligibility criteria to ensure that vaccination has become a priority for the bank. You asked for some examples. I could have many examples. I want to give you a few relevant ones. We are talking about vaccination, COVID vaccination. Clearly, COVID is not the only one. With UNICEF, we have put 500 million to try and eradicate polio. With WHO, we have done 1 billion to finance primary health care worldwide. And more specifically in Africa, as there is another leg which is more important, which is also trying to ensure that Africa is able to have local production and so not to be so dependent from import from third-party countries. We have financed Institut Pasteur, which will produce locally, when the project will be finished, up through 300 million doses annually for Africa, but also, for instance, a company called I need to find the name. Essential for API, active pharma ingredients, which are those ingredients which are necessary also for those medicines which are off the shelves. So also for, let's say, more basic needs, which are though very important for the market.
Very interesting. Christelle, if I want to turn to you, Sanofi has a big footprint in Egypt, long-standing and quite large. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. So good evening, everybody. So first, let me start by just saying very shortly, so Sanofi is a global leading pharmaceutical company. We are present in more than 70 countries in the world. And what we actually do is we invest in cutting-edge research and development and science to develop medicines that have really the potential to transform completely the practice of medicine and improve people's lives. So this is our mission, and we have been proudly doing so also in Egypt since more than 60 years, with actually a portfolio that is quite wide, because that goes from prevention with vaccines, but also to treatment of chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension, where we are actually leading on the market. But also we have also rare diseases and oncology products, and immunology products. So quite a wide range of products. And we are very proud actually to say that, and this we have increased our footprint and percentage over time, but today 75% of the volume that we actually sell in Egypt are produced locally. And we continue to expand this percentage because we are also looking at partnering, and we have developed partnership with Egyptian partners and players on the market to also continue to produce locally some of the essential products that this country needs, and that is answering very important unmet medical needs. We're also looking at potential projects also around the localizations of our vaccines. So that percentage will continue also to increase over time. So I was looking the panel is actually the value proposition in pharmaceutical production. I think Sanofi is a living proof that Egypt actually has a very strong value proposition for that. Maybe the one last thing I would say is that it's not only about production. I think our commitment in the country goes much more beyond that, because we do believe that it's really about making our products accessible, and that means also a lot of medical education. It means patient management. It could mean digital healthcare solutions also to do that at best, but it also means capability building. So this is also the type of partnerships and programs that we have been developing in the country. And just to land on also how we're looking at the country on the longer term, I think with the Egypt 2030 vision for healthcare, but also, of course, the large population and unmet medical need, we think our portfolio going forward can answer those needs. And this is why one of the decisions actually that our group has taken in the last months was really to have Egypt as one of the main countries to run our operations also for Africa.
Thank you. You touch upon the key enablers for attracting more investments from the pharma multinationals. So thank you very much. Any other thoughts on how to attract more? I would like to say competitors to you, but if not competitors, then more investment from your side into Egypt. What would you need from the government? What are the things that will help you?
So I said what we do is, of course, we continue to develop those innovation going forward. We have actually currently in our portfolio 12 potential innovations that can be breakthrough treatments that will transform the practice of medicine, whether in vaccines or in immunological treatments. And of course, for us, the key question also going on the long term, on top of everything that we do today, is how we're going to be able to give access to those treatments around the world. And I think when you look at this access to innovation piece, the first thing is like, what is innovation is about? It's about improving patient outcomes, but it also reduces the healthcare cost when properly used, because it reduces hospitalization, complications, so there are other positive effects on that one. And also it has a positive social impact, also with an impact on jobs, because healthy people also have, of course, a positive social impact. So I think the key question going forward for me is going to be like, we do understand that those innovative treatments might bring or have a more higher public burden at a specific point of time. But at the same time, I think the cost effectiveness and the overall value for it has to be looked at, of course, on the total system. And I also think that what is very important is to build a sustainable system is the resilience of the system, and most importantly, the investment that is done on infrastructure and capabilities as well. And the last point I would say is about the regulatory frameworks. And I think Egypt has demonstrated with its regulatory framework that it has actually accelerated fast track also for innovative products. So I think, in a nutshell, the three things I would say to continue to, in particular, I would say attract investments from multinational companies would be those three things, right? So financing of innovation, and what are the mechanisms for it, and how do we look at maybe broader at that picture. The second one is really about the capability building and making sure that the full impact is there on those one. And the third one is continue to evolve and think the regulatory framework to allow for accelerated path for innovation, but also predictability.
On this last point, I've heard once from an investor telling me that they prefer a bad regulation that is stable and predictable and transparent over a good regulation that is not. So I think, yes, indeed, the stability, predictability, and transparency of regulation is extremely important. Dr. Riad, Christelle mentioned and reminded us of the title of the session on the value proposition of Egypt. What are the distinctive attributes or advantages that Egypt has, and why can it be a prime location for European investments?
Well, first, thank you to everyone here for making it through the day. I know it was quite an early one. I have to disagree. I don't think it's a good thing to have a stable but bad regulator. I think we need a regulator that understands the needs. And I think we have definitely a good regulator, especially on this panel. I do agree with consistency, for sure. because this is an industry that has really long cycle times and really long gestation periods. So I think we've heard it so many times today. Egypt has most, if not all, the right ingredients. So strategic location. I think strategic location, proximity to Europe, being united by the same med, I think, was one of the great comments that were mentioned again and again today. And that reduces cost, reduces carbon footprint, reduces time. It is without a doubt that Egypt has had industry since the early 30s. I mean, within our organization, we've had industry since 1936. And this industry continues to have capable talents. So capable talents in different sides of this industry. In manufacturing, in research, in clinical trials, everywhere really. I mean, the list is known and is quite clear. I think one of the comments that Dr. Ali mentioned was that there are something like 12 manufacturing facilities that are EMA approved. EMA means they are good to export to every country in the European Union, which is, I think, a big proof that they went outside of their way to add a quality approval like that. I mean, as an organization, we've been approved 4 times in a row without any critical citations in the past 12 years. So quality is definitely there. But when you go to the heart of the matter, what is most important in collaboration? What is most important for a strategic investment? And in my mind, it's clear value, that my collaborator will give superior value because collaborations have clear cost, and investments outside of the country where we exist have significant troubles or people that we have to convince that we make this investment outside. But other than that, I think for strategic investments to happen, I think we need to depend on a location that shows a track record of agility. I think agility, especially in health, is very important. Everything takes a long time, I think, in medicine. Innovation takes a long time in medicine. Approvals take a long time. So you need a country like Egypt where you can see fast agility. I mean, I want to just reference the new regulatory system that is in place, and we can attest to that. The Reliance system that is present now with European approvals. You get an approval in Egypt. And in the same way, the reliance that is available with other African countries once a product is approved in Egypt. So all of that leads to agility. My last point would be, I think the most important thing in the value proposition in Egypt is alignment on values, especially with medicines. You want to make sure that the promises you're given are true, that what you hear is the truth, that you can deal with a partner that is transparent, and not always have doubt that half of what you hear might not be true. Because, especially in medicine, everything needs to be precise, because we're dealing with health of patients and health of citizens. And this is one of the most, in my opinion, and this is from my experience, differentiating factors in Egypt is that we have very much high alignment with values that are shared in Europe. And this is why, if I was a European company, I would like to deal with people that share my values and that I can believe them.
Very clear. I like the soft aspect of sharing the values that is usually forgotten. Andrea, if I can come back to you, what we always hear is that projects are not being, accepted or are not being interesting for investors. But at the same time, we see a lot of funding available, whether equity or debt. And if we dig deep, usually the root cause is in the bankability of certain projects. We understand that EIB has a very high value proposition, and you're quite differentiated in helping countries or investors make projects more bankable. Can you tell us more about it, please?
Yes, with pleasure. At the bank, we have a key component of our value proposition, which is our advisory services. And why they are important? They are very important for us because they allow projects to align to the most advanced international standards. And then we help projects to grow, and as you say, to become bankable. And this is particularly relevant in those regions where, for instance, the regulatory framework is not aligned to the best standards internationally. And the approach that we have is not a standard one, but more a tailored one. And this is thanks to the fact that internally the bank has some 400 people, which are engineers and economists, and they are specialized in all the areas of intervention of the bank. So they really know how to support specific projects in specific areas. Most importantly, advisory is needed, let's say, in specific areas. So it can be really tailored. It can be a feasibility study. It can be, for instance, an environmental or social impact assessment. It can be a capacity building for the promoters. We do it internally. We also use consultants when needed in order to speed up the processes. And just to give you an example in terms of magnitude, today the bank has more than 540 million worth of contracts in implementation in advisory services. The way we operate is thanks to the support by the European Commission and other donors, which give us funds, for instance, the member states, but also by resources by the bank. For instance, the bank has recently launched a very significant initiative, EU4U, which is supporting Ukraine. But we have a specific facility also, which is called EU Africa Global Gateway Project, which benefits from 25 million grant from the European Commission, and is dedicated to feasibility study and health in various sectors, including pharma. And I want to conclude with a request, which is a lot of nice words, but if we don't then put it in practice, it becomes a bit of an empty discussion. So I will be here also tomorrow. I'm more than pleased to discuss with any of you. But I also please ask you to get in touch with our colleagues. We have a regional office here in Cairo. There are resident people here. So if you think that we can be of any help, please reach out, and we're more than happy to discuss with any of you. Thank you.
That's a nice commitment. Thank you, Andrea. Dr. Riad, maybe we can conclude with you. The size of the market in Egypt is quite significant, quite interesting, but also Egypt can have a higher and larger addressable market if we look at Africa especially. How can Egypt work with the EU in order to serve Africa better and more?
Absolutely. So I think we've heard it before since the early morning. 105 million Egyptians living in Egypt, and maybe the number approaches 120 if you include all the refugees that have shelter in this country from all neighboring nations. So definitely a sizable market. But without a doubt, what we see practically is that companies, big pharma or middle-sized pharmaceutical companies or other healthcare-related companies can access different African countries through Egypt. And I think it's the usual triangle. So, for healthcare, you need diagnosis. And for that, first, you need healthcare professionals. So you need capacity building. And I think Egyptian doctors are quite able and exist in many African countries and are able to transfer such education, as well as being able to do the diagnostics in the different African countries and then make the medicines accessible. In terms of accessibility of medicines, through tech transfer, we as a company, we were a participant in receiving some technology from an American big pharma to make diabetes biologics. Simple biologics as well as quite fancy, modern GLP-1 biologics, that enable us to do a second brand. So that enables this company to move the best technology and make it with the best quality standards, but still have the price point that enables access in the continent, as well as that price doesn't influence negatively some of the markets where they sell and where they have to incur such high R&D costs. So voluntary licensing and tech transfer of second brands. So this is one. The second is that we have a partnership with a Swiss big pharma to manufacture immunity-related medicines for organ transplantation, especially after the legislative change that happened in Egypt that will allow for more organs to be transplanted. This medicine will be manufactured in Egypt for 20 other African countries, and thus making such a very sophisticated medicine available at the right price point, but more importantly, sustainably available. You know, on the continent, for the continent is a big initiative that is run by the African Union and is pushed by the African Union. And I just want to add a couple of numbers to the number that Dr. Ali mentioned. So in Egypt, 91% of the medicines by volume are manufactured in Egypt. If we compare this to the rest of the continent, only 5% of the medicines manufactured only 5% of the medicine used in the continent are manufactured on the continent, and only 1% of the vaccines used on the continent are manufactured locally. That does not help in any way or form resilience. And a way to do that is tech transfer, which I guess is a win-win, or technology transfer for manufacturing for other African countries or for the broader region. And number three, I think such tech transfer only helps everyone. If we look at developed nations, some big five Europe, including Germany, we find hundreds of products that are out of stock. And this is where I guess collaboration can help make more products not out of stock just in Africa, but out of stock everywhere. And the ingredients are there, and I think the values are aligned. In my personal opinion, it's just up to private sector to bridge the gap. Private sector can speak faster, can have real agreements that together, I guess, can move mountains, as we've heard previously today. And such agreements have happened and are happening at a faster pace. And this is what exactly our citizens demand of us. We're all patients, and patients don't have the luxury of patience. So I hope private sector shows us more and more proof that we can, bridge the Mediterranean and get to more collaborative agreements.
That's a very nice conclusion for the session, Dr. Riad. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you. I'd like to thank Christelle, Dr. Ali, Andrea for the session today. Thank you all for being with us today. We really look forward for the continued collaboration between Egypt and EU, and hopefully a stronger industrial partnership between Egypt and the EU. With that, I would like to invite you to the plenary. There are some fireside chats and maybe still the deal signing. Let's see if it's still alive or not. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a great day. Thank you.
Pleasure. For more commitments.